You're listening to the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast presented by Kraus Health, the exclusive healthcare partner of Syracuse Athletics.
Well, welcome back to another edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast. And we're going to have a lot of fun today, folks, because we have a guy that some Syracuse fans of a certain age are going to remember, fan favorite, back in the mid-90s. A guy who was part of the 1996 team that went to the national championship game, former Syracuse basketball player Elimu Nelson. Elimu, welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Recently, a weekend or two ago, a whole bunch of former players were in town for a bunch of events, and I got to see you at a game with a lot of former players, the game that was kind of in honor and trying to help raise money for Felicia Leggett-Jack's Syracuse women's basketball program. And I got to tell you, Elimu, when you walked in the gym, I was so excited to see you because it's been a long time, and it just brought back a flood of memories from when you were playing here at Syracuse. Those were some fun days, some fun teams.
Absolutely. It was a great seeing you. I was really happy to run into you. Were you at the game the night before?
No, I was at the game on Saturday at Nottingham High School.
No. Yeah. So I remember seeing you there, but I know if you had also come to the other one and I had missed you at that one.
No, you didn't miss me. I missed it. My colleague Donna DeToda was at that one. We split up the assignments, so we both got to see, some of the former players, and it was great fun for 2 or 3 days there. Just to remind folks out there who may not know or may not remember, Elimu, you played at Syracuse for 3 seasons as a walk-on, 94 to 96, and as I mentioned earlier, your senior year was the year that Syracuse went all the way to the national championship game. Before losing to Kentucky. What are some of the memories of those years that maybe stand out the most when you think back to them? Because you probably had a few memories flooding back to you, on your return to Syracuse recently.
Oh, for sure. So just to correct you, 93, 94, 95, I was a walk-on. In 95, 96, I was a scholarship player.
They awarded you a scholarship your senior year. That's right.
They did.
Sorry to take that away from you.
No. It's all good. It's all good. I just making the team itself. I tried out my second year of school, which would have been my sophomore year. And remember, I was like the final cut. And Bernie came over to me. Bernie Fine told me, he was like, hey, if we need somebody to practice, we'll call you. I'm like, all right. And so the following year, I came back and I was talking to my dad about it before, I'd like hit campus. And he's like, if you really want it, don't let anything stand in your way. And John tells me this story. I don't recall it. He was like, the only reason you didn't make the team is because of your dreads. Because when I was a sophomore, I grow my hair out to about here. So my third year, which would have been my junior year, I shaved all my hair off. And one of the most fond memories for me is like preseason, normal student, you can practice with the team, you sign a waiver, that whole sort of thing. So you're in the weight room with them, you're running on the track, and then what was then mainly field house, you're playing these games, right? And so the year that I didn't make the team, I remember like I lived next door to Z and to John. So wow. And I accrued like a reputation with my intramural team called Juice. And so people knew that I could play. Mm-hmm. So on those preseason games at Manley Fieldhouse, it's players that are playing the next year on the team, guys that have been playing overseas or playing in the NBA, and they all come back. And then there's just a bunch of regular students just waiting to play. So what happened was, I think Z was like, hey, you're with us. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I came out and I was playing, and it was Anthony, I forgot what his name was. He was
Anthony Harris.
Yes, Anthony Harris. Yeah. So I remember I was playing him and I was guarding him. I think I stopped him a couple of times and I made a shot and he was talking smack to me. And like the team, I did really well. And the team that I was on, like we won. And so it's like, like you win the game, you stay on. You're like, all right, you're off. Right. And I was like, all right, okay. Right. Z gave me a pound, John gave me a pound, and that was that. The following year I come back, I signed the same waiver. Running, but I've shaved my hair at this point. I run in track in the weight room, and the same games are happening outside. And so at the beginning of the games, John and Z and Luke, they're like, no, like he's with us this year, but the tryouts hadn't happened yet, right? So I remember seeing like my friends, and I'm like, oh, like I'm like on the court, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm playing, and it's probably like my third play. Somehow I wound up underneath the basket, and Luke Jackson caught the ball and he just dunked it right on my head. And he was like, "Welcome to the team, Rook." I was like, "Okay." And then there was another situation where John was going up for like a fast break dunk, and we were like meeting at the rim. And in college, I was really strong, and I caught him at the top, and I blocked him. And went down, and then, probably maybe like 3 or 4 days later, John's the one that came out. He was like, "Yo, like you made the team." He was like, "Congratulations," and I was like, because I hadn't heard anything.
Right.
Then the
Coaches
tryouts
haven't said
happened.
anything.
Yeah, then the tryouts happened, and we had a bunch of walk-on spots available that year. The team did, and so at the end of the tryout, it's kind of one of those like nerve-wracking things where like I think they stand there with like a list, and they're like, "All right, you made it, you didn't, you didn't, you didn't, you made it. Thanks for coming out."
Yeah.
So I remember I had already gotten the physical for the team, and Charlie Lockwood and I were the only people that were cleared to play for practice. So like,
Sure. Charlie Lockwood, lacrosse
yep,
star.
yep. They're like, "Elimu, you made it. Go in and go get changed. Come back out for practice." So I remember going, and I was sitting at the locker, and I'm like, my name's on the locker, and I pull out the jersey, and I'm like, oh my God, like I did it. And I think like the guys came in there like, they're kind of giving me crap or whatever. And it was just a really good memory, because every school that I got recruited to, I didn't get recruited by a bunch. I got recruited to D2 and D3 schools for soccer and for basketball. And every trip I went to a trip to Brandeis, because I'm from Milton, Massachusetts. So I'm sort of like local schools. I always wanted to go to Syracuse. And honestly, I remember seeing Adrian Autry play. I was like, oh, like I want to play with him. And I always used to watch Syracuse. I was just drawn to it. So I'm talking to the coach from Brandeis. He's like, if you could play any place, where would you want to play? I was like, any place? He was like, yeah. He goes, it doesn't have to be here. I go, Syracuse. And you remember like Charlie Brown's teacher, like, wah, 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 wah. That's all I heard. He was like, well, you wouldn't play there because of wah, wah, whatever he said.
Right.
I came up to Syracuse my senior year of high school on like an academic trip. And I ventured off from like the program, and I walked straight into Manley Fieldhouse, and I walked into what would have been Wayne Morgan's office. And I was like, hey, my name's Elimu Nelson. I basically averaged like a triple double my senior year in high school. So I ran off my stats, and I was like, I really want to play here. And he looked me up and down, and he goes, you're too skinny, you'll never play here. And I was like, okay. So, I come out for the first day of practice, and I say, hey, coach, you remember me? And he was like, oh, I do. And then, then the experience of being a walk-on happens, because I'm like, I'm ready to play. I'm used to playing and stuff like that. And honestly, as a walk-on, I played a lot as a walk-on. I
You
don't know.
did. People could tell you could play. And
Yeah,
I think that's one of several reasons why you became a fan favorite after a while.
yeah. It was. I remember going to the hotel the night before the Tennessee game, which was the first game, and so Coach B's giving his speech, and he's talking, he's doing all the things. And Chucky Gillette was on the team. He goes, listen, I'm not afraid to play Chucky, Elimu, and he's just rolling through his thing. And I'm like, yeah. I'm sitting here like I have no idea how this is gonna go, right? And he leaves, and then it was Red, John, Luke, like they're all coming in, they're sitting around me like he never talks about walk-ons, and they're literally sitting there figuring out and Mo, and they were like, yo, like he could probably come in for like 2-3 minutes at the end of the game, or like in the halftime. Oh, we could get a break here, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So then the next day for the game, I come in, and I remember I have on my headphones because I'm used to playing in high school, right? Like I got Pearl Jam rolling through my earbuds or up through headphones at that point. And I come out on the court, and Bernie's like, he's like, hey, he taps me. He's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm getting ready to warm up, right? So I'm out there, I'm like dribbling, I'm shooting around. He was like, hey, man, like you're not playing, so just pass it to the players that are going to play. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm doing that, and then Don, I forgot what his name was in the that tape people's ankles and all that stuff. His
Oh,
name is
Don Lowe, the trainer, Don
yeah,
Lowe.
right. So I go in, 3.5 weeks preseason, all the rest of it. I'm putting my ankles up on the training table to get him taped. So I come in like this is what we do. So I put my ankles up, and he looks at me. Wait, what are you doing?
I don't need to tape your ankles, Elimu.
He goes, I said, I'll get my ankles taped. And he's like, no, walk on, you're not going to play. So then there was probably, I don't know, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes in the first half. And Scott McCorkle did something that Coach B didn't like. And he looks down the bench. He's like, Elimu, get in. And I promise you, my shooting shirt, I threw it up. And before it even hit the ground, I was in the game. So now I'm in there and I'm like, okay, all right. Help steal the ball. Luke's running down ahead of the break. I'm like, pass it back so I can score. And he didn't. And then right before the end of the half, somebody shot it and it bricked and it came out to me. And I was like that's probably about like Steph Curry range would be considered now.
Yeah.
And Red was like, he was like, shoot it. And I remember it went off this, I'll never forget, it went off this part of my hand because I was real close to hitting. And then I came in the locker room and then I went in and I got my ankles taped. And Don Lowe was like, he's like, I didn't know. I'd never seen it like that. And then, that was good. I got to talk to Dick Vitale. He put me on this all walk-on team. And,
Yeah.
it was great. It was great.
Well, I want to switch the subject just a little bit, and we'll get back to basketball, Elimu.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to introduce Syracuse fans to, in case they haven't been able to follow you since you left Syracuse after that '96 season, is your career. You are Hollywood, man. You're an actor. I
Yes.
know you've done some producing and directing and stuff like that, but tell me about how you got into acting. And in a minute, I'm going to go through some of your credits and ask you about some of them and some of the people you've worked with. But how did you just get into acting in the first place?
Okay, so shortly after I left Syracuse, I wound up in New York City for about like 10 months. And when I went to New York City, I had done like a modeling portfolio in Syracuse. And people told me like, oh, like, you should model. So I was like, hey, yeah, I'll model, like whatever. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I go down to New York. I wind up getting a manager. And because I saw face, dreads, like the look, it was kind of edgy at that point. So I wound up going on all these go-sees. And every go-see I went on, they'd look through my book and they go, you're not editorial enough. You're really commercial. Can you act? And I'd be like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, no. At some point, what's his name that did 90210? What's the guy's name behind that show? I forgot. He's a really big producer.
Golding, something like that. Aaron. I don't know, man.
I
You
should know
stumped me.
it. Anyway, so he sees my headshot, like my first headshot, and he's like, "This is the guy that I want on my show." The show was called Sunset Beach,
Oh, sure. I remember that
right?
show.
So at that point, my manager was like, "Hey, we're gonna get you a coach." And at this point, like I'm hanging out with my friends, I'm kind of figuring out what I'm gonna do. I'm like temping here and there, sort of thing. Not Aaron Sorkin. It was
I'm gonna get it.
this is gonna bother me because he's really big. Um,
You
so
keep going.
I wind up telling my friends that I'm hanging out with, I'm like, hey, because my manager was like, listen, you're gonna make a certain amount of money per week on this show. And the amount of money just blew my mind. And I was like, wow, okay. So I went and I studied this scene. I've never had any training at all. And what I did was I read the scene. I made sure that I had all the lines memorized. I'm reading through the action. So I'm like acting how I thought I should act. And I get there, and my manager at the time paid for like an hour. Within like 25 minutes, the guy was like, all right, we're done. Because I was so terrible. Just awful, awful. Obviously didn't get the job. Um, and then 2 weeks later, I went in for a commercial audition. At a 1-800, I think call collect, something like that, one of those commercials. And I remember we were starring opposite Bill Bellamy, who I actually have known out here. And so when I was in the audition, I had to act. And it was just, a couple lines with somebody. And what happened was I wound up experiencing this energy because I connected. And I was like, ooh. And in some form or fashion, that's what I've always followed. Right.
Okay.
Shortly thereafter, so I booked like a radio ad for like Tweeter Radio, I think it was, or Tweeter Stereo. It was like a radio ad. I booked that in New York. That was about it. I did like one Japanese magazine called Fine Magazine. I had like the entire like spread, but the clothes were too small because I was so tall. And then I wound up coming to LA with like $300 and 3 bags. And I stayed with a friend of mine that was I went to high school with. And I just started hitting the pavement. Like honestly, what got me through probably the first 5 or 6 years was just my arrogance at the time and my willingness just to take risks. Like I really thought I was a lot better than what I was, right? So I'd go out like a lot commercially, and I would. Here's a story for you. So at that point, like I could still dunk. I mean, I could do everything basketball. So I went out for this Powerade commercial, and there was like a number of guys that have played basketball in some sort of high level, maybe not as high as me, some that have higher, some mostly not. So we had to play basketball and play baseball in this commercial. This is pre my entire back is tattooed now, but no tattoo on my back, just a tattoo here. And so we go out and they're like, can you dunk the ball? And it's outside. So I'm dunking all over the place. And baseball, like I can fake it enough. And I have like my little short dreads hat. And so the casting associate walks over to me and she's like, hey, would you cut your hair for this? And I was like, I'm gonna cut my hair for this. The dude behind me, and I found out later on that they're like, if you had cut your hair, you would have been the guy. He did like 9 national commercials that year. But then the other part of it was I wound up getting this audition for this show called Pacific Blue.
Mm.
And so I had to go in and play this basketball player that led this double life. And I remember going in, forgot who the casting director was, but my habits weren't great at that point, right? So I kind of like read it, whatever. And then the guy looks at me, he's like, are you going to even try? And I was like, so from playing Syracuse basketball and being the underdog, I'm like, oh, like, you don't think I can do this? So he was like, well, I think I might give you a call back. I was like, all right, bet, give me a call back, right? So that we're having this whole exchange. He's like, make sure you're off book. I was like, yeah. So I come into the callback and the guy's like, do you have, like, you ready to go? And these were like the sides. I was like, yep. And I just like threw it down on the floor and I just spit out a choice. And so the director, Charlie Seabird, who unintentionally gave me my first acting class, was like, hey, could you do that again, but be more vulnerable? And I was like, all right. So I did it. They're like, cool, can you wait outside? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So they picked like 5 guys and they're like, hey, we just want to see if you guys can play basketball. And I'm like, all right, this is easy. But I'm like, I'm a very nice person. So the first guy I'm going one-on-one against, I'm like, hey, listen, man, like, we can totally not go. And he hits me. And I was like, dunked on him, dunked on the next guy. smash the next guy. They're like, all right, Elimu, just like slow down. So I got that role. It was like a top of show guest star.
Mhm.
All this dialogue I did not know what to do with. And the director would pull me to the side and be like, think about who you're talking to. Who would this be in your life? He's kind of teaching me about like relationships and stuff like that. And I'm learning like all of it on the fly. So that was the first thing that I did. And then I got into classes. I've trained with probably every big acting coach you can think of. So the feeling and the mistakes and realizing that I could do it is what furthered me in it.
Let's do a little speed round here. We'll kind of go through your career a little bit.
Okay.
Movies wise, one of the first things you ever did was something for TNT, and I liked it because it had a little basketball history to it.
Yeah.
The name of the film was Passing Glory,
Yeah.
and it was about the first integrated basketball game in the history of New Orleans. And one of I think the star was the late Andre Bauer.
Yes.
I wondered, you were still pretty new to this whole business. I wonder what it was like to work with Andre.
He was awesome. He was absolutely awesome. He gave me a lot of gems in terms of how to conduct yourself on set, how to act, and just stuff about the business itself. Very nice guy.
You were in a movie. Nick Cannon, I think, was the star. Love Don't Cost a Thing. Now we're about 2003. Oh, you're already laughing. Why are we laughing, Elimu?
I'm laughing because literally, had you been up at any of the events, like that movie to this day, last week up at CBT, 2003, I mean, I've gained weight obviously because it was years ago. I had no idea that film would afford me worldwide notoriety. That is the film that is every generation of teenager, that's their film. Like
Really?
students from I was taking pictures after the celebrity, the CBT game, right?
Yeah.
And the kids were like, oh my God, like I didn't know that Drew, like everyone calls me Drew because of the character, like that Drew went here to Syracuse. Like
Yeah, Drew Hilton. Oh my God.
yeah, like the first 3 or 4 years after that film, like I understand what it's like to walk down the street, be followed in your car, pictures, like all of it. Like it's not as prevalent now, but it's I mean it still happens.
That's really amazing. That's really amazing. In 2013, you're in another film called Things Never Said.
Yes.
And I thought this one was interesting.
Yeah.
She
Right
wasn't
there.
as famous. Hey, look, there's the poster.
Yep.
She wasn't as famous then, I don't think, as she is now, but Shanola Hampton,
Mhm.
and folks may out there, even if you don't know the name, if you ever watched the TV show Shameless,
Mhm.
and I was a huge fan of Shameless, and she's in a new show on network TV called Found.
Yep.
I mean, you're starring opposite Shanola Hampton. That had to be cool.
Yeah. That was a film that one of my best friends, Charles Murray, directed, wrote. He gave me that role of Ronnie because he figured that the industry would expect me to play Omari Hardwick's role, Curtis. So it was definitely a different look for me. I get a lot of comments about that film to this day. Like people want to hate me, but they didn't really hate me because I played with a certain level of vulnerability. Chanel is awesome, incredible actress, very nice,
Yeah.
very, very nice person.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about her until I saw her in Shameless. And since then, huge fan and everything. Some TV shows, you've done some guest spots, and sometimes you've more than a one-off. A couple of times you're like semi-recurring, but I'm just going to list a few shows here. The Shield, Criminal Minds,
Yep.
The Rookie.
Yep.
I think you went through a window in an episode of The Rookie, right?
Yeah. The stunt guy got thrown through the window. That was not me. Yeah.
I wondered if you had a stunt double.
Yeah. I had a stunt double for that. I was a little disappointed. My ass got thrown through the window, but it's what it called. Yeah.
You were in an episode of Modern Family.
Yes. Yes.
In like
I did like a
2015.
quick little role on that. Yeah, I played a cop opposite Steve Zahn, and like like most of the cast was actually in for the kids was like in that scene.
I was wondering what it's like to, just kind of have like a guest spot in a TV show where most of the cast, they're all established, they're all familiar with each other, and you have to come in and just kind of fit into a scene. I mean,
Yeah.
what's that? I mean, you got Julie Bowen and, Ty Burrell and everybody. I mean, what's it like just to kind of be the guy? Is it just kind of like you're almost like a walk on again? Just don't screw things up.
Like in like smaller parts, like in that one, in that particular episode, because I was part of the joke.
Yeah, you were a
Um,
cop.
yeah. And so I'm like the foil in the joke. It was pretty easy. But other things that I've done where it's, like earlier in my career when it was like really just a couple there, you just don't want to screw it up. But then as you become, like top of show guest star, I've done like recurring things. Like I remember when I did a really big guest spot on Tommy, which was Edie Falco's show that was on CBS for like a year. And
Okay.
I shot it in New York. And I remember they had told me, and I was speaking with her about it, like she had a hand in picking all of the cast and even all of like the guest cast in it. So that was a set where you felt very included. So it's like when you feel included and you have more responsibility, it's kind of like if I was to compare it to basketball, like you get more minutes, you get more shots. You're not looking over at the bench like, did I mess up? Like you mess up, but you can recover on the next play, sort of thing. As opposed to when like you're a co-star, like you'll get takes, but you may hit the editing floor. They may just keep the camera on you the whole time while I'm speaking. It's not as important depending on what the role is.
Let's talk about your latest project. It's a movie that's on Lifetime right now. Title of the movie is Forever.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, one of the stars of the movie is another Syracuse grad, Tay Diggs.
Yes.
Um, you're going to have to help me get him on the podcast sometime. Tell it, how did this whole project come about? Because you got a pretty significant role in this one.
Yeah. So this one came about. Charles was directing it again, and he was like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna put you up for this role." And it wasn't the role that I wound up playing. I wound up auditioning for the role of his friend that was the baseball player, this guy named Gary in the film. And so when the production company, the people that were in charge of it, and the other producers saw my tape, they're like, "Oh, we want him to play this guy instead." Which, when I read the script, I was like, "Oh, I really like this guy because he's kind of an asshole," right? And to me, that's a little more fun than just like being somebody's friend. It's like I like playing roles that are like the wilted fruit on a tree sort of thing that's trying to become better fruit, right? This guy, the way that he is in the script, they made a very smart edit in the film. So if you see the film, my character, I basically come in, I just kick everything down and just wreck everything, right? There's a scene with Tay and I in the motel room after I come through and kick stuff over and say I'm taking the kids and all this stuff, where you see me come to the decision that I want to stay, and you see my vulnerability and stuff, but they chopped that out. So I received a lot as I was watching I went to the premiere, and then I was watching it, and afterwards when I was watching it like on my own, the executive producer, her name is Autumn Federici, was texting me screenshots from Twitter, and they were crushing my character. Something terrible, which is good because I did my job.
Right? They believed it.
Did they? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Listen.
good.
Yeah. I'll take it.
Hey, listen, there's a lot of people out there who, their best roles of their career are going to be like the villain or the jerk.
Yeah. I was definitely the
Nothing
villain.
wrong with that.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
So it's really amazing. I was wondering what's a bigger thrill? Sitting there and watching yourself up on a screen and knowing you're a part of this project, or being a part of the Syracuse basketball team, particularly maybe during that 96 run to the championship?
Got to give the nod to the 96 run. Like it's very close, but you got to understand, like when I grew up, like college basketball was my favorite sport. Syracuse was my favorite team. And I knew on Monday night, championship game, the entire world is watching. So my only disappointment from the Final Four was that it was in the Rutherlands and I was born in Jersey. I wanted to go someplace different. That was my only. But I remember like we got to the Final Four and it was like, oh my God, like we're like in the Final Four. And I remember I specifically remember warming up, getting my stats in the layup line pregame. And I'm like, the entire world is watching this right now. Like that experience, in some ways, the experience of being a basketball player at Syracuse, because like, you're one of like 15, 16 people in all of upstate New York, right? Because there's no professional team. Unless like the Buffalo Bills, you got to go much further north for that. So being a quote unquote celebrity kind of on campus and around the town, when Love Don't Cost a thing happened, that was pretty, it's still pretty big. It's probably bigger than Syracuse basketball. But for the other things that I've been known for and how people react when they see a quote unquote celebrity, Syracuse more than prepared me for that. Like more than prepared.
Did your background as a member of the Syracuse basketball team earn you any cred on any movies, or maybe especially this last one with Tay Diggs? Did Tay look at you and go, "Wow, you played at SU? That's something special"?
He didn't, but when we got talking about who we knew, in common at Syracuse and stuff like that, absolutely. But Syracuse
You
basketball.
didn't casually wear an old practice jersey.
Listen, no, but I'm like, I'm jersey over there. When I saw him, I was like, "Hey, what's up, Cuse?" And he was like, I said, "Yeah." I said, "We were there at the same time." He was like, "Okay," but he remembered me from an episode of Private Practice that I did. That he was on the show. We didn't work at the same time.
Oh, okay.
He remembered me from my guest spot on that. But basketball, Syracuse out here, for sure, because it's like it didn't hit me as much then. It was like, oh, I was really happy that we made it. Too bad we didn't win. We can also commiserate about that. But then as you get further and further out of school, what we did, it's a very small percentage that did it. So like, hey, I played at Syracuse. Oh my goodness, did you play for Boeheim? I'm like, yeah. They're like, do you know Coach Boeheim? I'm like, yeah, I played for him for 3 years. And then it's like, oh, you went to the Final Four. Oh, the Kentucky team. Oh, John Wallace. Oh, you got that sort of thing. It always lends to its credibility for sure.
That's really special. That's
Yeah.
really special. Well, I tell you what, you were a fan favorite on the basketball court, and now maybe a fan favorite on the silver screen. It's so cool to see the success you're having, and I wish you continued success. You'll
Thank you.
have to keep us posted on your career. I
Absolutely.
encourage everybody, if they want to look up Elimu. You can look up some of his past projects, but like I said earlier, right now on Lifetime, Forever, starring Tay Diggs. Megan Good is his co-star, right? I get that right?
Yes, yes.
See, yeah, look at me, man. I could go Access Hollywood on you. If this whole basketball reporting thing doesn't work out for me, I'll see you in Hollywood,
Yeah. Come out west. Come out west. We'd love to have you.
It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and I know now you're going to get a lot of fan mail. So good luck to you, and don't wait so long before you come back for your next visit. It was about 8 years this time.
Yeah,
We'd like to see you again soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back much sooner. A really, really good time.
That'd be great.
And
all right.
In the CBT game, I dropped 16 points. Just want to say that.
Fair enough. And you had your ankles taped, I hope.
I did not, but we didn't need to.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Elimu, and thank you to everybody out there listening and watching on the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast.
Join us next time for the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast, presented by Crouse Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics.